The gold shutters hit me like a slap across the face. I sat in my car, staring at my childhood home, or what used to be my childhood home, wondering if exhaustion had finally broken my grip on reality. The modest colonial I'd inherited from my mother now looked like some wannabe Instagram influencer's fever dream. My name is Paula, and 8 weeks ago I left to care for my dying grandmother. Now, pulling into the driveway past garish lawn furniture and hot pink flower beds, I felt like Alice tumbling down a very tacky rabbit hole. "Paula, you're finally back!" Carol's voice cut through my daze as I stepped out of the car. My stepmother glided down the front steps in designer yoga wear, holding what appeared to be a glass of water with floating citrus slices. "Bet you didn't expect such a transformation!" I accepted the glass mechanically, my eyes fixed on the enormous crystal chandelier visible through the front window. "What happened?" "Oh, darling, I knew you needed a change after everything with your grandmother. The house was so dated." Carol's perfectly lined lips curved into what might have been meant as sympathy. "I took care of everything while you were away. Wait until you see inside." Inside was worse. So much worse. Every wall screamed with crushed velvet wallpaper in jewel tones. Abstract art in gilt frames crowded every surface. The comfortable furniture I'd grown up with had vanished, replaced by angular pieces that looked expensive and felt like sitting on concrete. "Your emergency fund card came in so handy," Carol chirped, trailing behind me as I moved numbly through the rooms. The designer, Maximus Gray, absolute genius, had such vision, though we did go a tiny bit over budget. I stopped dead. "You used my emergency card?" "Well, yes. Ernest said it would be fine. Didn't you get my texts?" My father chose that moment to emerge from his study, looking everywhere but at me. "Paula, honey, you're home." Carol meant well. She wanted to surprise you. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking slightly as I checked my banking app. The credit card I'd set aside strictly for emergencies showed a balance of 41,073.42. "Where's Mum's piano?" I asked, staring at the empty corner where the beloved Steinway had lived for 30 years. "Oh, that old thing," Carol waved dismissively. "It clashed with the theme. I had it donated somewhere. But look at this gorgeous accent table we got instead." I excused myself, claiming jet lag, and retreated to my bedroom. Even there, the walls had been painted a sickening shade of mauve. I sank onto my bed, at least that remained unchanged, and pulled up my text messages. To Tyson. "How fast can we move on what we discussed?" His reply came quickly. "Give me 48 hours. Document everything." I started taking photos, methodically capturing every gaudy change. In my desk drawer, I found a crumpled receipt that made my blood run cold. A design consultation fee for Maximus Gray, dated 3 weeks ago. Long before any of this redecorating nightmare had started, a knock at my door made me jump. "Paula?" My father's voice, hesitant. "Carol's planning a welcome home dinner. She's ordered from that Italian place you like. I'm not hungry," I called back, still staring at the receipt. "Long drive. I just need sleep." "New beginnings are good, honey," he said through the door. "Change can be good." I didn't answer. After a moment, his footsteps retreated down the hall. I could hear Carol's voice floating up from downstairs, already planning the next phase of her improvements. My phone buzzed again. Tyson. "Found anything interesting yet?" I snapped a photo of the receipt and sent it to him. Then I opened my laptop and started documenting every unauthorized charge, every missing item, every change made without my knowledge or consent. The quiet rage building in my chest felt almost calm, like the eye of a hurricane. They thought I was too nice, too passive to fight back. Carol probably assumed I'd cry a little and then accept it, like I'd accepted her marrying my father 7 years ago, like I'd accepted her slowly taking over family holidays, rewriting our traditions, pushing away my mother's memory inch by inch. But this time she'd gone too far. This wasn't just about ugly wallpaper or missing furniture. This was about boundaries, respect, and the last tangible connection to my mother I had left. My phone lit up with another text, this time from my best friend Addison. "You home yet? How bad is it?" I typed back, "Worse than we imagined, but don't worry, I know exactly what I'm going to do." She always knew this would happen. I sat across from Tyson in his office, clutching a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. "Grandma warned me about Carol before the end. Tell me exactly what she said." Tyson leaned forward, legal pad ready. He'd been my grandmother's lawyer for years before becoming mine, and his familiar office felt like a sanctuary after the chaos at home. She said, "Paula, that woman's been eyeing your inheritance since day one. The minute you show weakness, she'll pounce." The memory of my grandmother's last lucid conversation made my throat tight. "I should have listened. You were caring for a dying relative. That's not weakness." Tyson pulled out a thick folder. "Now, let's talk strategy. The house is legally yours. Sole inheritance from your mother. Ironclad documentation right here. Carol has no claim to it whatsoever." "But my father is just a resident. He has no ownership rights." Tyson spread out several documents. "What we're looking at here is financial abuse, unauthorized access to funds, and damage to personal property. The credit card charges alone are enough for criminal charges." My phone buzzed. Addison calling. I put her on speaker. "Girl, I just drove past your house," she said. "Those shutters are a crime against humanity. Please tell me you're with Tyson right now." "We're building the case," I replied. "But Carol's already trying to lock me out of parts of the house. She changed the master bedroom locks yesterday." "Document everything," Tyson and Addison said simultaneously. "This isn't just revenge, Paula," Addison continued. "You're reclaiming what's legally yours. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty about that." A knock at Tyson's door interrupted us. His secretary poked her head in. "Mr. Bennett, the property assessor's report just came in." Tyson scanned the document, his eyebrows rising. "Well, this is interesting. According to this, Carol's improvements have actually decreased your home's value by about 30%. The structural changes weren't properly permitted." "Structural changes?" My stomach dropped. "What structural changes?" "Looks like they removed a load-bearing wall to create that open concept layout you mentioned." I pressed my fingers to my temples. "So, not only did she steal my money and destroy my mother's home, she might have actually damaged the house itself." "This keeps getting better," Tyson muttered, making notes. "We can add endangerment to the list of—" My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ingrid, our neighbor who'd lived next door since before I was born. "Paula, do you have a minute? I need to tell you something. About Carol. I'll call you back," I told her, then turned to Tyson. "How fast can we move on the eviction?" "Given the circumstances, we could have it ready within days. But are you sure you want to go that route? It means evicting your father, too." The memory of his weak, new beginnings excuse flashed through my mind. He made his choice when he let her empty my accounts. Paula. Addison's voice was gentle through the speaker. Have you talked to him? Really talked to him? I tried this morning. Want to know what he said? That I'm too emotional and too possessive of the past, that I never could move forward. My laugh felt bitter. Apparently, moving forward means letting Carol destroy everything my mother built. Tyson's phone pinged. He checked it, and his expression darkened. We might need to move faster than planned. Carol just tried to list the house for sale on 3 different real estate websites. She what? I stood up so fast my chair nearly toppled. Don't worry, it's illegal. I've already contacted the sites to have the listings removed, but it shows intent. Intent to steal my house out from under me, I said flatly. Exactly. I'll start the paperwork today. Tyson began gathering documents. In the meantime, don't confront her. Act normal. We don't want to tip our hand. My phone lit up with a text from Ingrid. Please call when you can. It's about Carol and that designer she hired. I saw something last month that you need to know. One more thing, Tyson said as I gathered my things. Change all your passwords, bank accounts, social media, everything, and check your credit report. Someone this bold might try other forms of identity theft. I nodded, already feeling more centered than I had since coming home. Having a plan helped. Having proof helped more. Thanks, Tyson, for everything. Don't thank me yet. He smiled grimly. Save that for when we serve them the papers. Walking to my car, I finally called Ingrid back. Her first words made me stop dead in my tracks. Paula, I don't know how to tell you this, but last month I saw Carol kissing that designer through your kitchen window. They didn't know I was in my garden. I gripped my keys tighter, pieces clicking into place. Tell me everything. The security camera footage from my grandmother's house loaded slowly, frame by frame. Carol had stayed there during the initial remodeling, claiming she needed to supervise the workers. Now I knew what kind of supervision she'd been doing. I clicked through the archived footage until I found what I was looking for. Carol and Maximus, heads bent together over blueprints spread across my grandmother's antique dining table. The timestamp showed 2:1:14 a.m. Look at this, I whispered to Addison, who was watching over my shoulder. These aren't just renovation plans. They're talking about converting the whole house into some kind of luxury bed and breakfast. Wait, pause it there. Addison pointed at the screen. That document, it lists Maximus as business partner. I zoomed in, my hands shaking slightly. They were planning this for months. The renovation was just phase 1. Paula! My father's voice made us both jump. He stood in the doorway of my bedroom, looking uncomfortable. Can we talk? Addison squeezed my shoulder and slipped past him. I'll call you later, she mouthed. As soon as she was gone, I turned to face him. About what, Dad? The unauthorized renovations? The stolen money? Or how about Mum's piano? You're being too emotional about this. He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Carol just wanted to help modernize things. You never could move forward, Paula, always clinging to the past. The past? I pulled up the banking app on my phone. Is $42,000 of unauthorized spending in the past? Because that seems pretty current to me. She was trying to increase the property value. It's my property! The words burst out louder than I intended. My house, Dad. Mom left it to me. And you've turned it into a shrine. His voice hardened. Every room frozen in time like some sort of museum. Carol's right. It's not healthy. I stared at him, really looked at him for the first time since coming home. When had he become this stranger who valued his new wife's whims over his daughter's inheritance? I'm going to take pictures of the renovations, I said quietly. For insurance purposes. He hesitated in the doorway. Paula, please. Can't we just... Just what, Dad? Pretend everything's fine? Move forward? I turned away, my camera already in hand. Oh, I think we're done here. Room by room, I documented the damage. The gaudy wallpaper, the structural changes, the empty spaces where family heirlooms had been. In the living room, the blank spot where Mom's piano had stood felt like an open wound. Oh, are you photographing my improvements? Carol appeared, all false brightness. The piano went to a lovely church, by the way. It clashed with our new aesthetic. Our? I kept my voice neutral, remembering Tyson's advice. Well, of course! We're family! She perched on one of her hideous new chairs. Actually, I wanted to discuss something with you. Ernest and I have been thinking, wouldn't it make sense to put both our names on the deed? As co-owners? I nearly dropped my camera. Co-owners? Just to make things official, we'd invest more, really boost the resale value. She pulled out a document. I have the paperwork right here. Just a simple amendment to the current arrangement. I'll think about it, I said, snapping a photo of the papers when she wasn't looking. Don't take too long, dear. Opportunities like this don't last forever. As soon as she left, I texted everything to Tyson. The photos, the security footage, Carol's generous offer. His response came quickly. Don't sign anything. Coming by tomorrow with the final documents. I was about to reply when something caught my eye. A plain white envelope poking out of the mail slot. No return address, no postmark. Just my name in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside were screenshots of text messages between Carol and Maximus, dated over the past 3 months. She's still at her grandmother's. Perfect timing. Once we get her to sign over the partial ownership, the rest will be easy. What about Ernest? He'll do whatever I say. The dead weight we're going to shake off soon enough. My hands were steady as I added the screenshots to my evidence file. The last piece of my mother's legacy, the home she'd loved so much. They'd planned to take it all along. Tyson, I texted, how soon can we serve those eviction papers? His reply was immediate. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. I looked around at the garish walls, the tasteless furniture, all the physical proof of their betrayal. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. My phone buzzed one more time. Addison. You okay? No, I wrote back. But I will be. Would anyone like more pancakes? I held up the serving plate at breakfast, smiling pleasantly. Carol looked suspicious at my sudden domesticity, but helped herself to another stack. These are delicious, honey, my father said, relief evident in his voice. He probably thought I'd come around to their point of view. Old family recipe, I replied, watching Carol drench her plate in syrup. Mom used to make them every Sunday. Carol's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Speaking of family matters, have you thought about our discussion? About the deed? Actually, I have. I poured myself more coffee, buying time. It's such a big decision. Maybe we should meet with a lawyer, make sure everything's properly handled. Oh, I've already spoken to someone. Carol brightened. He said it's a simple amendment. We could sign today. My phone buzzed quietly in my pocket. Tyson confirming the morning's arrangements. I kept my expression neutral. That's so thoughtful of you, Carol, but I'd like to review everything first. Of course, of course. She waved her fork dismissively. Though I do have an exciting proposition for you. Maximus and I have been discussing the possibility of converting part of the house into a boutique bed and breakfast. The potential profits would be amazing. I recorded every word on my phone, hidden beneath the table. Tell me more about that. Well, with the right investment, say a home equity line of credit, we could transform this place into something truly spectacular. Carol's eyes gleamed. I've already looked into the paperwork. A home equity line? I took another sip of coffee. Wouldn't we need my signature for that? Something flickered across Carol's face, too quick to catch. Oh, just preliminary research. Nothing concrete yet. My father cleared his throat. Carol, maybe we should... Ernest, please. She cut him off with a sharp look. Paula, darling, I know change is hard, but think of the possibilities. With my vision and your property, we could create something magnificent. My phone vibrated again, Addison this time. Movers confirmed for 11 a.m. Police escort arranged. I need to think about it, I said, standing to clear the plates. Big changes like this take time to process. Don't take too long. Carol's voice had an edge now. Some opportunities have expiration dates. I escaped to my room, immediately calling Tyson. Please tell me everything's ready. More than ready. His voice was grim. Paula, we found something. Carol tried to apply for a home equity line of credit 3 days ago, using your name. My hands gripped the phone tighter. What? She forged your signature. Badly, thankfully. The bank flagged it immediately. I've added it to our documentation. A knock at my door made me jump. Paula? My father again. Carol wants to show us some design plans for the bed and breakfast idea. Coming, I called back, then whispered into the phone. How long until? 2 hours. Tyson replied. Just keep them talking. Document everything. Downstairs, Carol had transformed the dining room table into a vision board, complete with magazine cutouts and colour swatches. I'm thinking we start with converting the east wing, she said, pointing to a floor plan. Maximus has connections with some excellent contractors. I'm sure he does, I murmured, snapping mental pictures of every document she showed me. And this would all be funded by the home equity line, among other sources. Carol smiled, all teeth. We've already had interest from several investors. My father stood awkwardly to the side, examining a paint sample with far too much concentration. I wondered if he knew about the forged signature, about Carol's affair with Maximus, about any of it. What about Mom's study? I asked. The one you've kept locked since I got back. Carol's smile tightened. Oh, that's being completely reimagined. The antiques didn't fit the new aesthetic, so I had them placed in storage. Which storage facility? I'd have to check my records. She shuffled some papers. Now, about that deed amendment. My phone buzzed. Police and movers en route. ETA, 20 minutes. You ready? Tyson. I looked at Carol, still chattering about her grand plans. At my father, avoiding everyone's eyes. At the house my mother had loved, now warped beyond recognition. Actually, I said, standing up, I think it's time we discuss some amendments of my own. Carol's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? You'll see. I smiled, hearing the distant sound of vehicles pulling up outside. In fact, I think we're about to have some visitors who can explain everything. The doorbell rang, and Carol's face went pale as she glimpsed the police car through the window. My father finally looked up from his paint sample, confusion giving way to dawning realization. "Paula," he started, "what have you done?" "No, Dad." I walked to answer the door. "The question is, what did you let her do? She's too meek to fight back. She practically gave me the house." Carol's voice carried clearly through the heating vent, her speakerphone conversation with Maximus echoing up to my bedroom. "Once we get rid of all these dreary old memories, this place will be perfect for our little venture." I pressed record on my phone, adding to my growing collection of evidence. "And Ernest?" Maximus asked. Carol's laugh was sharp. "Please. He's so afraid of conflict he'd let me sell his daughter's kidney if I batted my eyes enough." My hands shook as I texted Tyson. "Need to move faster. They're planning something." "Meet me at your mother's grave in 30 minutes, he replied, bringing final paperwork. The cemetery was quiet, morning fog still clinging to the headstones. I found Mom's marker easily. Simple, elegant, just like her. Someone had left fresh flowers recently. Probably Ingrid. "Thought I'd find you here." Tyson appeared beside me, leather briefcase in hand. Ingrid signed her formal statement this morning, detailed everything she saw between Carol and Maximus. "Did she mention the storage unit?" I asked, thinking of Mom's missing antiques. "Better. She got photos." He pulled out a document. "Carol's been selling your mother's furniture piece by piece. We tracked most of it to high-end consignment shops." My throat tightened. "The piano?" "Found it. Not at any church. It's listed for sale online. $30,000. I stared at Mom's headstone, remembering her playing that piano every evening after dinner. They really thought I wouldn't fight back. Speaking of fighting back, Tyson handed me another paper. The contractor Carol hired finally returned my calls. She never paid him. Tried to convince him you'd handle the bill. "How much?" $28,000. I've added it to the financial misconduct charges. My phone buzzed. The sheriff's department. "Ms. Rogers, we're cleared for civil standby tomorrow morning. Shall we schedule the removal process for 9 a.m.? "Do it," I told them, then turned to Tyson. "What's our next move?" He opened his briefcase. "Sign these. It's all ready. The eviction notice, proof of financial abuse, documentation of property theft, evidence of attempted fraud with the home equity line. The moment you sign, we can proceed." The papers felt heavy in my hands. "My father." "Will be served the same papers as Carol. He's complicit, Paula. The bank statements prove he knew about the credit card theft. He helped her forge your signature." I thought of Dad's weak excuses, his averted eyes, his endless enabling of Carol's schemes. Taking the pen Tyson offered, I signed every document. Now what? Now we wait. Tyson checked his watch. The sheriff will serve them papers first thing tomorrow. I've arranged for a moving company to remove their belongings. Everything they brought in, everything they bought with your money. It all goes. My phone lit up with a text from Ingrid. Carol just left the house with 3 large boxes. Looked like photo albums. "She's stealing more memories," I whispered. "No, she's panicking." Tyson was already dialing. "She knows something's coming. I'll have the police intercept her." Walking back to my car, I spotted Carol's designer SUV pulling into the cemetery. I ducked behind a large monument, watching as she parked near the entrance. She was on her phone again, Maximus on speaker. Everything's falling apart. That nosy neighbor keeps watching the house, and Paula's been asking questions about the furniture. Calm down, Maximus soothed. She has no proof of anything. Besides, once we get the bed and breakfast running, it won't matter what she thinks. I suppose you're right. Carol sighed. She's always been such a doormat, just like her mother. Something snapped inside me. I stepped out from behind the monument, phone recording. Want to say that again, Carol? She shrieked, dropping her phone. Maximus's voice squawked from the speaker. Carol, what's happening? Just gathering more evidence, I said calmly, ending my recording. By the way, how's that home equity line application going? The one with my forged signature? Carol's face went from red to white. You can't find the words? I smiled. Don't worry, the sheriff's department will have plenty to say tomorrow morning. I walked away, leaving her sputtering into her phone. My own phone buzzed one last time. Addison. Everything okay? Better than okay, I replied. It's almost over. Behind me, I heard Carol's car door slam, her tires squealing as she fled the cemetery. But I kept walking, calm and steady, past my mother's grave and toward tomorrow. The time for being a doormat was over. I ordered those croissants you love from the French bakery, I told Carol, setting the breakfast table with Mom's best china. And Dad, there's that special coffee you like. This is unexpected. Carol eyed the spread suspiciously. What's the occasion? Can't I do something nice for my family? I poured coffee, checking my phone. 8:47 a.m. I have some news to share. My father settled into his usual chair, looking cautiously optimistic. Good news, I hope. You could say that. I heard vehicles pulling up outside, but kept my expression neutral. Try the croissants. They're still warm. Carol took a delicate bite, then froze as heavy footsteps approached the front door. The doorbell rang, followed by sharp knocking. I'll get it, I said, standing. Keep eating. 2 police officers stood on the porch, flanked by Tyson and a team of movers. Ms. Rogers, we're here for the civil standby. Right on time. I stepped aside to let them in. They're in the dining room. Carol's voice rang out from behind me. Paula, who's at the door? Why don't you come see for yourself? I called back. She appeared in the hallway, coffee cup in hand, my father trailing behind her. The cup shattered on the floor when she saw the officers. What is this? She demanded. Tyson stepped forward, documents in hand. Mrs. Rogers, Mr. Rogers, this is an eviction notice. You have 2 hours to collect your personal belongings. Anything purchased with Ms. Paula Rogers' funds, or taken from the house without her permission, will be confiscated. Eviction? My father's face went pale. Paula, what are you doing? Exactly what I should have done weeks ago. I nodded to the officers. They forged my signature on loan applications, stole over $40,000, sold family heirlooms without permission. You can't prove any of that! Carol's voice rose to a shriek. Actually, we can. Tyson handed her a thick folder. Bank records, security footage, witness statements, documentation of every item sold, every illegal renovation, every attempt to steal this property. Carol turned to my father. Ernest, do something. But he just stood there, staring at the papers, trembling in his hands. The credit card. You said Paula had approved it. The movers will help you pack, I said quietly. Everything you came with, you can take. Everything you bought with my money stays. You ungrateful little... Carol lunged forward, but an officer stepped between us. Ma'am, Please remain calm. This is a legal proceeding." The movers began their work, efficiently boxing up Carol's designer clothes, her personal items. She followed them, screeching about lawyers and lawsuits, while my father sat heavily in a chair. "Paula," he tried. "We can talk about this. Like you talked to me about giving Carol access to my accounts, or selling Mom's piano." I watched another mover carefully wrap Carol's precious artwork. "Or helping her forge my signature." He flinched. "I never meant—" "To get caught?" I finished. "Save it, Dad. The papers are signed. It's done." "You'll regret this," Carol shouted from upstairs. "You think you've won? I'll sue you for everything. Like you sued your last 3 husbands?" Tyson called back. "The ones we found in our background check? Interesting pattern there, by the way." Carol appeared at the top of the stairs, face mottled red. "Who told you about—" "Your ex-husbands send their regards." Tyson smiled. "They're very interested in testifying about your financial habits." One of the movers approached me, holding something carefully. "Ms. Rogers, we found this hidden in the attic, Mom's keepsake box. I thought Carol had sold it with everything else. Inside, all our old photos were still there, along with Mom's jewelry and letters." "She was going to take it," the mover whispered. "Had it packed with her things." I hugged the box close, watching Carol and my father being escorted out. 2 hours later, the house was quiet again, empty of their presence, but still full of gaudy furniture and tacky decorations. "The restoration company comes tomorrow," Tyson said, reviewing his checklist. "They'll start removing the unauthorized changes." "And Carol?" "Won't be bothering you again. The police want to discuss the forgery charges, and those ex-husbands are very chatty." I stood in the foyer, surrounded by the aftermath of their betrayal, clutching Mom's keepsake box. Through the window, I watched Carol's SUV pull away, my father in the passenger seat, neither looking back. "You okay?" Tyson asked softly. "No," I answered honestly. "But I will be." The house felt different already, lighter somehow, despite the awful decorations, like it could breathe again, like I could breathe again. "Have you seen Carol's Facebook yet?" Addison's voice crackled through my phone speaker as I supervised the restoration crew. "Her whole social circle is imploding." I pulled up social media on my laptop. Carol's latest post, a long dramatic screed about betrayal and family values, had backfired spectacularly. Comments poured in from her country club friends, all distancing themselves. "Did you see who commented?" Addison asked. Maximus threw her under the bus completely. There it was, Maximus's carefully worded statement. "I was misled about the ownership of the property, and never would have participated had I known the truth. My sincere apologies to Paula." "Trying to save his reputation," I muttered, watching workers strip away the gaudy wallpaper. "He's got 3 other renovation projects in the neighborhood." Speaking of neighborhood drama, Ingrid says Carol's been calling everyone, trying to spin the story her way. Nobody's buying it. A worker appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Rogers, we found something behind this wall." In what used to be Mom's study, they'd discovered a hidden alcove. Inside was a stack of papers, documentation of every item Carol had sold, complete with prices and buyer information. "She kept records," I said, thumbing through the pages. "Every single thing she stole and sold." "Perfect for the police investigation," Addison replied. "How's your dad handling everything?" As if summoned by her question, my phone buzzed with his number. I let it go to voicemail. "That bad, huh?" "He's called 6 times since yesterday, left messages about, understanding both sides and finding middle ground. I watched another section of wallpaper peel away, revealing Mom's original pale blue paint beneath. There is no middle ground for fraud. My phone buzzed again. Tyson this time. Carol's lawyer called. They want to settle. No deal. I texted back. Good girl, he replied. The DA's office is very interested in the forgery evidence. Addison whistled. From social butterfly to social pariah in under 48 hours. That's got to be some kind of record. A commotion outside drew me to the window. Maximus stood on the front lawn, arguing with Ingrid. I just want to explain my side, he was saying. Your side? Ingrid's voice carried clearly. You helped that woman steal from Paula while sleeping with her behind her husband's back. There is no your side. I opened the window wider to hear better. Carol manipulated me, Maximus protested. She said she owned the house, that Paula had approved everything. And the affair. Ingrid crossed her arms. Was that approved too? He fled to his luxury car, face red. 3 other neighbors had come out to watch, phones recording. Well, Addison commented, there goes his local business. My phone buzzed with another text, an unknown number, screenshots of conversations between Carol and Maximus, planning their future together. Once we get rid of the dead weight? Ernest is such a fool. Paula won't know what hit her. Who sent these? I asked Addison. Maximus's wife, she replied. Apparently Carol didn't know he was married. Neither did Ernest. The restoration crew called me back inside. They'd found Mom's original curtains in the attic, carefully packed away. As they hung them, the room started feeling like home again. Paula. Addison's voice softened. You've got everything you wanted. The house, justice, karma hitting them hard. Why do you sound so empty? I watched sunlight filter through Mom's curtains, casting familiar shadows. Because I'm alone in this big house. Because my father chose her lies over me. Because winning doesn't feel like winning. Want me to come over? No, I need to... I trailed off as another worker appeared. Ms. Rogers, there's someone here about a piano. In the driveway stood a delivery truck. The driver held out a clipboard. Delivery from Second Chance Consignment. All paid up, including restoration fees. Mom's piano. Someone had bought it back. A note was taped to the lid. Some things should stay in the family. Ingrid. My phone buzzed one last time. Addison. You're not alone. You never were. I stood in the doorway, watching them bring the piano home, while neighbors gathered to help direct the movers. Ingrid appeared with cookies. Someone else brought coffee. The house felt different now, not just emptier without Carol's garish touches or my father's presence, but fuller, somehow, with people who actually cared. You okay? Ingrid asked, touching my arm. I looked at Mom's piano, back where it belonged, at the neighbors who'd stood by me, at the house, slowly returning to itself. Getting there, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. The wildflowers spread across the backyard like a painter's palette. Purple coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, and my grandmother's favorite orange butterfly weed. I knelt in the soft earth, planting another cluster of seedlings. Your mother would love this, Ingrid said, handing me a glass of iced tea. She always said gardens should run wild and free, unlike Carol's geometric shrubs and imported topiaries. I sat back on my heels, surveying our work. The landscapers are removing the last of those tomorrow. Inside, the house had already transformed. Mom's warm colours replaced the gaudy wallpaper. Her beloved books returned to their shelves. The piano sang again every evening, though my playing was rusty. The mail truck pulled up, and Ingrid fetched the delivery. "Letter from your father," she said quietly. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope. Like the 5 previous letters, this one was thick with explanations and half apologies. "Paula, I know you're still angry. Carol fooled us both. She had a way of making everything sound reasonable. I never meant to hurt you or disrespect your mother's memory. Please call me. We can fix this." "Still blaming everyone but himself?" Ingrid asked. "Still can't admit he chose her lies over his own daughter." I folded the letter back into its envelope. Still doesn't understand this isn't about forgiveness. My phone buzzed. Addison sending a news link. Carol's latest court appearance had made the local papers. 3 ex-husbands had testified about similar schemes: marriage, financial fraud, elaborate renovation scams. The DA was pushing for jail time. "Help me with this last section." I gestured to the remaining flowers. Grandmother always said plant in 3s for good luck. As we worked, more neighbours stopped by. Someone brought fresh lemonade. Another shared cuttings from their garden. The house that Carol had tried to turn into a cold showcase had become a true home again, warm with friendship and life. "Package for you," called the UPS driver, struggling with a large box. Inside was the ugliest couch from Carol's renovation, the one that cost more than a car payment. I'd donated it to a local shelter last week. With it came a thank you note. "This hideous thing is surprisingly comfortable. Our residents love it. Karma works in mysterious ways." Sarah, Harbour House Director. I laughed, showing Ingrid the note. "Think Carol would appreciate knowing her designer couch is being used by the people she used to complain about at her charity luncheons. Speaking of karma..." Ingrid nodded toward the street. Maximus's distinctive car crept past, slowing near the house. 3 of his high-end clients had cancelled contracts after the scandal broke. His wife had gone public with the affair. Last I heard, he'd been reduced to small bathroom remodels in the next county. "Should we wave?" Ingrid asked mischievously. "Let him look," I said, turning back to my flowers. Let him see what he couldn't steal. The afternoon sun painted everything golden as we finished planting. I stood in the kitchen later, making grandmother's peach pie recipe while Ingrid shared stories about Mom, how they'd trade plants over the fence, how they'd drink coffee on summer mornings. "You know what your mother used to say?" Ingrid handed me another peach to slice. She said, "Houses have souls. They remember who loved them and who tried to hurt them." "Is that why the roof leaked only over Carol's closet?" I grinned. "And why that fancy wallpaper wouldn't stick, and the imported chandelier kept flickering?" Ingrid winked. "Your mother's house knew what it was doing." The pie filled the kitchen with sweet warmth as it baked. Through the window, I watched the wildflowers dance in the evening breeze. No rigid rows or colour schemes, just natural beauty, growing exactly as it should. My phone lit up with a text from Tyson. "Carol took a plea deal. Restitution, probation, no jail time. But the fraud charges stick. You okay with that?" I thought about Carol's social disgrace, her ruined reputation, her lost lifestyle, about my father's empty apologies and emptier house, about karma's perfect aim. "Yes," I replied. "Justice comes in many forms." Ingrid touched my shoulder. "Pie's ready." As we sat on the porch with warm pie and cold tea, Watching the sunset paint the wildflowers in fire colors, I felt my mother's presence in every breath of evening air, in every petal and leaf, in every inch of the house she'd loved and left to me. Some people inherit furniture, some inherit bloodlines, some, like Carol, inherit the consequences of their choices. I inherited fire and learned how to use it. The wildflowers nodded in agreement, fierce and free, exactly as they were meant to be.
Hey, Daniel, let's talk, I said, reaching for the remote and pausing the movie. What? You're pausing at the best part. What's going on? He complained, clearly annoyed. Daniel, you're 37 now, right? That's prime working age. Don't you think about the future? Spending all day at home drinking and watching TV, I started, trying to hold my frustration in check. The future? There are plenty of 37-year-olds who don't work. Many people enjoy life without a job, he shot back defensively. True, but those people have something else they're dedicated to. Do you? I pressed, trying to make him see the bigger picture. Yeah, I know you're upset about me not working. I'll look for another part-time job, he said, dismissive but with a touch of reluctant acknowledgement. While Daniel seemed stuck on only working part-time, I knew pushing him too hard could backfire, especially with his history of quitting, but it was becoming clearer that he needed to find some stability, and soon. One day, while I was at work, I received an unexpected text from Daniel that immediately set off alarm bells. Dad's retiring, so we're going to Spain to celebrate. Starting today, I'm borrowing your platinum card. We're going to enjoy ourselves on your credit card. I called him right away, my heart racing with confusion. What do you mean? A trip? Just what I said, he replied, sounding nonchalant. I don't understand, I pressed. Just what I said, he repeated. Please explain the implications of what I'm saying. The implications were impossible to ignore. While celebrating Peter's retirement was fine, Daniel should have discussed this trip with me before taking my credit card. The idea that he might have told his parents he was funding the trip himself, using my credit card no less, made my blood boil. I felt angry, betrayed, and taken advantage of. This was a glaring reminder that despite some progress in our relationship, deep-rooted issues, mainly responsibility and communication, still loomed large. As we continued to talk about his upcoming trip, Daniel said something that made my stomach drop. You mentioned borrowing a credit card. Do you mean the one from our house? Yeah, why? He asked, his tone casual, almost too casual. I own a platinum credit card. It's not just for high earners. Credit history and stable income are important factors, and it's possible to secure one in your 30s, even with a high annual fee. I find value in the benefits it offers, but this card was meant to be for my personal use. So you took the credit card from home? I asked again, trying to keep my voice steady. Yeah, so I'm counting on you to cover the payment, Daniel replied, too cheerful given the situation. His lightheartedness made it clear that he thought he was in control, but I knew the truth was about to complicate his plan. What are you waiting for? We need to leave, he urged, eager to get going. Hold on, I said, cutting him off. The credit card you took won't work. What? That can't be right. It's under your name, and it expires this month, he said, sounding confused. It's close, but it's already been replaced, I explained. The old one won't work anymore. I've already activated the new card, so the one you took is essentially useless. Daniel's disbelief grew. Are you lying, Angela? You're lying to stop me from using the card, aren't you? His voice, once casual, now carried a sharp edge of frustration. Yes, it expires this month, I admitted, which is why I already received a new one. You can try using the card, but it won't work. I'd love to see you attempt to pay with a card that's been deactivated. Daniel paused, muttering to himself, clearly caught off guard. I could hear his parents calling in the background, but he didn't seem to know what to say next. What should I do? I told them I'd pay for everything except the round-trip flight, he said, sounding desperate. Oh, so they covered the flight? I asked, trying to piece together the situation. Yeah, Dad felt bad about paying for the whole trip, so he covered the flight, Daniel explained, a slight hint of relief creeping into his voice. What should I do now? I'm about to take a cab, but I don't even have money for that. That's not my problem, I responded, my voice firm. You said you would pay for everything except the flight. Using my credit card was wrong from the start. You should be paying with your own money. How can I? I don't have any money right now, Daniel exclaimed, the weight of his situation finally hitting him. Daniel, this is exactly why things are like this, I said, frustration rising in my chest. You haven't been taking work seriously, you've been avoiding your responsibilities, and now you're in this mess. The situation was a painful reminder of the larger issues between us. Daniel had tried to impress his parents by planning a trip he couldn't afford, relying on deception rather than facing the reality of his financial situation. As I ended the call and returned to my work, I knew the truth would soon catch up with him. He would eventually have to come clean to his parents about his financial deception, and when he did, I hoped he would finally realize the gravity of his actions. To celebrate his retirement, I'm planning a special trip to Spain with our parents. Starting today, I'll be using your platinum card for the expenses so we can make the most of this occasion. I hope you understand the urgency because we need to leave soon. I'm a little confused. Can you explain what you mean by using my card? And what's the trip about? Sorry, I have to leave now, but we can go over the details later. Just a heads up, the card may not work. It turns out my husband, Daniel, already took it to fund a vacation with our parents. I've put up with a lot from Daniel, but this time, he's crossed a line. When he gets back, he's going to regret it. I'm Angela, and at 35, I built a successful career at a major company. After graduating from a prestigious university, I've reached a point where I earn enough to support not only myself but also Daniel, who's currently unemployed. We've been married for 4 years and are considering starting a family, though we haven't yet. Even though my career is thriving and my income is steady, I can't help but feel something's missing. The idea of having a child is just that, an idea. Meanwhile, Daniel's unemployment is a persistent reality. Tonight, I'm not hungry, I've already snacked, but that's a small issue compared to Daniel's job situation. He didn't go to a job interview today. Instead, he stayed home, browsing job sites. Daniel hasn't had a full-time job in over a year and has only taken temporary, part-time positions, quitting each one after a short time. He's looking for both full-time and part-time work, but I keep encouraging him to focus on securing a steady, full-time role. I know there's a right time for everything, but I wish he could find something stable soon. It's clear he can't be pushed too hard, given what happened with his last job, but I think it's finally time for him to settle into something more permanent. Daniel's last job ended on a difficult note after a fallout over work policies. He stood his ground against his boss, supported by his colleagues, but as tensions escalated, his coworkers sided with the boss, leaving Daniel feeling isolated and betrayed. He couldn't handle the growing animosity and eventually quit. Afterward, he retreated into himself, spending most of his time alone in our room. It took a couple of weeks for him to re-engage with life and help around the house. He made jokes about having plenty of free time, but the smiles didn't quite reach his eyes. It took another few weeks before he started looking for work again. At first, he was optimistic and ready to move forward, but the job search wasn't as easy as he had hoped. Despite his qualifications and effort, rejections kept coming, which he blamed on his difficult exit from his last job. It left him feeling discouraged, questioning his value, and it's been hard to watch. The cycle of rejection began to wear on him. One day, I came home to find shredded resumes all over the living room floor. It was clear his latest interview hadn't gone well. I suggested he clean up the mess, and he admitted he was considering giving up on job hunting altogether, thinking we could live on my salary alone. While some people are happy as full-time homemakers, that wasn't Daniel's ideal situation. It felt more like an escape from the pressure of finding work. I recognized his struggle, especially with the fallout from his last job, and decided to give him some space to process it all. Still, we needed to talk seriously about his future and career goals. The situation couldn't continue indefinitely. I've always been dedicated to my work, so this extended break isn't just about relaxing, it's preparation for what's ahead. It's good to hear that you're focusing on the future too. Living close to Daniel's parents, Helen and Peter, has its complexities. After Daniel quit his job, they started visiting more often, likely concerned about him. When they learned he was getting ready for his next career move, they seemed relieved, but the reality was far different. The beer's running low, can you pick some up on your way home? I asked one evening. Again? You're drinking too much. Try to cut back a little, I suggested, gently. Fine, I'll get it myself, Daniel replied, a little sharp. Despite how things appeared, Daniel wasn't preparing for a new job. His days were mostly spent watching TV and drinking beer. I suspect he was embarrassed by his unemployment, so I chose not to tell his parents the full story to spare his feelings. After more than 4 months of inactivity in his job search, I knew it was time to confront the elephant in the room. Daniel, maybe it's time to start looking for work again. You seem more settled now, I suggested gently. He shot me an incredulous look. What? It's only been 7 months since my last job. You want me to go back to work after everything that happened? His voice mixed disbelief with irritation. I just think the break has been long enough. Let's not drag this out, I urged, trying to keep the conversation calm. Stop nagging, You don't get it. Your job's going fine, but I have my own struggles. Everyone faces work problems and relationship issues, he snapped, his frustration evident. Despite the tension, Daniel agreed to start job hunting, which I saw as a small victory, but as he walked out mid-conversation, clearly upset, I knew we weren't quite done. When he calmed down, I planned to apologize, hoping to smooth things over. What came next, though, took me by surprise. I got a job because you pushed me, Daniel said one day, a reluctant edge to his voice. That's great. Where? I asked, feeling a spark of hope. At a nearby supermarket, he replied, his tone indifferent. Then, almost dismissively, he added, but it's part-time, no need to work too hard. I paused, not wanting to sound. Later that evening, after a long day at work, I received a call from Helen, Daniel's mother. I heard from Daniel. He tried to use your credit card and lied about working. I'm so sorry for the trouble this has caused. She apologized. No, please don't apologize, Helen, I replied, trying to calm the situation. I appreciate you calling, but I'm just trying to figure things out. I'm so sorry about the credit card, she continued. We'll cover the costs of this trip when we get back. I'll make sure Daniel apologizes and starts looking for a job right away, Helen promised, though I could sense the concern in her voice. I appreciate that, Helen, I said, feeling a pang of guilt at the thought of the conversation ahead, but I'm considering divorcing Daniel. Divorce? Because of this? Her shock was evident. Partly, yes, it's not just the credit card, it's everything. Daniel has been taking money from me for a while now. I stopped giving him money to curb his drinking, but he still found ways to get it. He took money from my wallet, sometimes just $10, other times $50. Over time, it added up. When he took my credit card for this trip, it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about realizing he had no intention of changing. I understand, she said, her voice quiet now. Should I tell Daniel about the divorce? Can you just tell him that I want a divorce? We'll talk about everything else when he gets back, I said, trying to keep things as calm as possible for the time being. The next morning, Daniel called. I didn't answer, though I had a sinking feeling he'd already learned about the divorce. By evening, when I returned home from work, I found him sitting in the living room, clearly having cut his trip short. I'll start working seriously now, Daniel said, his voice full of desperation. Please don't leave me, I'm sorry. His apology caught me off guard, but it came too late. After a year of giving him chances, of voicing my concerns and warnings, he was now asking for one more. I couldn't keep pretending things would change. I'm not giving you another chance, Daniel, I said, standing firm. You gave up on me a long time ago. My decision is final. Can you leave? My voice was steady, but inside I was a storm of emotions. The cycle of empty promises had to end. Please don't say that. If you won't leave, should I move out? He asked, his voice tinged with defeat. Only if you can afford the rent here, I replied, trying not to show the hurt that lingered beneath my words. He fell silent. The reality of his financial situation was hitting him hard. He had no money for rent and no job to rely on. I watched him quietly leave the house, the weight of everything hanging between us. A small part of me wanted to offer help, maybe give him some money for a cab, but I reminded myself, he was an adult. He had to manage his own life now. As I stood in the doorway watching him leave, a strange emptiness settled over me. It was sad, yes, but also relieving. This moment, as painful as it was the beginning of something new for me. Later that evening, after Daniel had gone to his parents' house, Helen called again. They let him stay for the night, but they told him he has to leave tomorrow. They were worried if he stayed longer, it might just reinforce his dependence on them. It was tough, but they believe it's necessary for him to figure things out on his own. When Daniel returned to our house the next day, desperation was clear in his voice. Please help me, I've got nowhere to go and no money, he begged, his face a picture of defeat. No, this is the consequence of your actions, Daniel, I said, my voice firm but filled with quiet sorrow. You need to handle this yourself. You've had plenty of chances. It hurt, but I couldn't go on enabling him. Over the past year, he'd neglected every responsibility he had, choosing to live irresponsibly. The weight of it all had finally worn me down, and I had to let go. The divorce proceedings moved quickly with the support of his parents, and I'm not sure where Daniel went after that. He probably continued his pattern, bouncing from job to job, making excuses, never fully taking responsibility for his life. You'd think I'd feel lonely without him, but surprisingly, I didn't. Daniel's presence had always been a source of constant stress, walking on eggshells, trying to avoid confrontation. Now that he was gone, I found myself living a life of peace, one I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Our life together had become a burden, and until he left, I hadn't fully understood how heavy I was stunned when my husband, Jonathan, suddenly suggested I move back to my parents' place even though they already lived with us. His words left me speechless, as if he thought this was all perfectly logical. He coldly added, "Do you have a problem with that? Don't argue. I'm fine with divorcing you if you do." His recent aloofness had been hard to ignore, and I'd been quietly weighing my own frustrations. I'd even thought about divorce myself, but the way he was pushing me out felt wrong. I couldn't help but think, am I not the one paying $3,200 for our expenses? Does he even appreciate that? As I stood there, still processing his ultimatum, his impatience flared. "Leave this house now. My parents won't feel comfortable with you here." I didn't understand why he felt so strongly, but I nodded. "Fine, I'll take all my things with me." With that, his face relaxed, and he said, "Then do it," before turning away. Right after he left, I called a local shop to arrange for selling my belongings. "My name's Betty, and I live with Jonathan, who's 3 years older than I am. We met through mutual friends, and what started as a casual meetup turned into a day we didn't want to end." Jonathan had dreams of becoming a voiceover artist, and I was charmed by his deep, smooth voice. Soothing voices had always been a weakness of mine. It turned out the attraction was mutual. We exchanged numbers and soon found ourselves constantly planning to see each other. Our relationship blossomed naturally without any formal talk about being together. I had just graduated from college when we met, and dating someone with a little more life experience was exciting. My friend Laura had concerns about our age gap, but I reassured her, I liked Jonathan, and he made me feel valued. Laura eventually came around, trusting my choice. After 2 years together, Jonathan brought up marriage. I had already talked to my parents about him, including his age, and they were excited to meet him. I often wondered when he'd propose, but it happened one evening at my place. In typical Jonathan fashion, casual and straightforward. It wasn't the most romantic setting, but that was fine by me. When he asked, I just replied, "Sure, let's get married." We were both relaxed about the whole thing, and soon after, we visited each other's families. Meeting Jonathan's family, though, was a bit unsettling. Their house was filled with lavish decor, trying too hard to project an air of old-fashioned wealth. His parents wore expensive clothing and showy jewelry, as if they were putting on a performance of affluence. It was clear our tastes didn't align, and I had doubts about whether I'd ever get along with them. Jonathan's mother even made a cutting remark about my appearance, which stung. I was surprised by the family I was about to marry into, but I reminded myself that my commitment was to Jonathan, not his family. After the wedding, Jonathan and I moved into our new condo, but something seemed to be weighing on him. One day, he asked, "Who was that woman in the blue dress at our wedding?" I was confused at first. Many guests wore blue. "Who are you talking about?" "The one who gave a speech as your best friend," he clarified. "Oh, Laura," I replied, remembering her outfit. "Yeah, that's her," he said, his tone uneasy. "Why do you ask?" I pressed, curious. "It's nothing," he brushed it off. "I just thought I saw someone like her on my way to work, and it reminded me she was your best friend." I was puzzled by his sudden interest in Laura, but before I could ask more, he chuckled and went back to his room. Shortly after that, Laura called, sounding thrilled. "Betty, guess what? My boyfriend's coming back to Canada next year." Laura and her boyfriend had been inseparable since high school. They'd known each other since childhood, and even when he moved away in middle school, they kept in touch. When he returned in high school, he confessed his feelings for her, and they became a couple. I loved hearing about her sweet, enduring love story. Despite his overseas work assignment, they had managed to keep their relationship strong. "Do you think he might propose once he's back?" Laura asked, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "And then you'll get married," I teased, grinning. Laura laughed. "Oh, Betty, you're always jumping ahead. Just make sure I get an invite to your wedding, so I can give another heartfelt speech." "Of course, after the beautiful speech you gave at my wedding, I'll expect the same at yours, just don't make it too perfect," I joked. We both laughed, sipping our tea, savoring the easy, familiar rhythm of our friendship. Laura and I had always been there for each other, a constant source of support and understanding whenever life threw us challenges. Around this time, though, I started noticing changes in Jonathan's routine. He was coming home later and later. "Working late again?" I asked one evening. "Yeah, or do you think I shouldn't work?" he replied, a hard edge to his voice. Jonathan was still chasing his dream of becoming a voiceover artist, taking part-time jobs to cover his training expenses. The problem was, all his earnings went straight to his classes, leaving me to handle our living costs on my own. Saving together was nearly impossible, and I was beginning to feel the weight of it. As the days passed, I grew more concerned. Jonathan's hours at his part-time job kept increasing, only adding to our financial strain. "Haven't you been working a bit too much?" I asked one day. They really shouldn't be pushing you to do so much overtime. I told you, I'm fine, more money is better, isn't it? Just keep your opinions to yourself, he snapped. By this point, Jonathan had grown distant. He no longer used my name, simply referring to me as you, and our conversations had lost the warmth they once had. His voice, once gentle and captivating, had taken on a rougher tone. He was drinking more, and I even noticed his voice sounded hoarse, considering voice artistry required a clear, healthy voice, yet he brushed off any attempts to talk about his health or workload, and more often than not, he seemed to avoid speaking to me altogether. Eventually, he started ignoring me, even when we were in the same room. During these tough times, Laura called. She sounded serious, saying she had something important she needed to tell me. I suggested we meet, eager to talk through my concerns. We chose a quiet cafe, and Laura picked a private booth with a clear view of the counter and staff from the door. You chose this spot on purpose? I asked, noticing her careful choice. Yes, she replied, her voice tense. I wanted to be somewhere the staff could see if anyone suspicious was outside our door. A suspicious person? Does this have to do with what you wanted to talk about? I asked, sensing something serious. Laura nodded, looking uneasy. She explained that ever since she left her job a month ago, she'd felt like someone was following her. Now, she even felt watched on her days off. She'd picked a spot with a clear view because she feared her stalker might try to eavesdrop on our conversation. Have you talked to the police? I asked, concerned. I tried, but they said without any direct contact, there's not much they can do, she sighed. What about your boyfriend? Isn't he coming back next month? I hoped she had more support. I'll talk to him too, but I wanted to come to you first, she explained. I understood her need for immediate support. Laura hadn't managed to catch a clear look at her stalker, making the whole situation more unnerving. She wasn't even sure if her stalker was a man or a woman. I decided to keep a discreet watch myself to see if I could identify who was following her. Amid my own struggles with Jonathan, I tried to be there for Laura, but soon, I made a disturbing discovery. The person stalking her was my husband, Jonathan. While he often claimed he was working late, I noticed him lurking near Laura's workplace and following her when she left. I was horrified to realize that the man terrifying my best friend was my own husband. Watching Jonathan trail Laura with a sinister grin shook me to my core. The man I thought I knew now felt like a stranger, and the love I once cherished turned cold. I knew I had to protect Laura. I urged her to move immediately for her safety. With help from her colleagues, she arranged for someone to drive her directly from the parking lot to her new place, taking every precaution to keep her safe. As Laura made her escape, Jonathan grew increasingly frustrated. One day, his bottled-up anger erupted. My parents are moving in, so you need to go back to your parents' house, he demanded abruptly. I was floored by his sudden, unreasonable request. If you have a problem with that, then I'm fine with divorcing you, he snapped. Though I had my own frustrations and had thought about divorce, it was jarring to see him so ready to push me out. I couldn't believe he thought he could just kick me out of our home, especially when I was the one paying $3,200 for our monthly expenses. I gave him a disbelieving look, but he just snapped again. Just leave already. My parents can't move in if you're still here. Why should I leave? I don't get it, I said, trying to keep calm. Fine, I'll take everything I bought with me. Jonathan looked almost pleased as I agreed, telling me to hurry. I immediately called a local buyback service, and the next day, they arrived. Jonathan watched with a smirk as I packed, but his expression changed as they assessed all our furniture and appliances. When they finished, a worker handed me a quote. Everything comes to $299,000, they said. I nodded. Great, sell it all. Jonathan's smirk vanished as he grabbed my arm. Why are you selling everything? My parents are moving in. How are they supposed to live here with no furniture? I shook off his hand. What do you mean? When we got married, you told me you were broke because you were paying for acting classes. You asked me to handle the rent, furniture, and living expenses. I didn't know you were this broke. I feel deceived. Remember that $3,200 I've been paying every month? That's yours now, and with your parents moving in, I bet it'll be even more. Jonathan went pale, realizing the weight of the situation, his confident facade crumbling as he tried to gather himself. You thought talking about money would make me back down on the divorce? Who do you think you are? Jonathan sneered. I'm already close with a wealthy lady. He struck a smug pose, as if that declaration was a triumph. I remembered how he had been following Laura around lately. If he thought that was getting close, he was delusional. Laura came from a well-off family, her grandfather a successful businessman and her father his successor, but she'd always been down to earth, never flaunting her wealth. She lived like the rest of us, never defined by her family's money. Jonathan must have somehow learned of her background and, thinking wealth made someone more desirable, Imagined he'd found a better match. The idea was infuriating, but I knew Laura would never give him a second thought. She was deeply committed to her high school sweetheart, who was due back in the States soon, with plans to marry her. When I pointed out to Jonathan that Laura felt uncomfortable because someone had been stalking her, his smug look faltered. He seemed shocked to hear that Laura found him creepy and that they were far from close. "I've always walked Laura home," he tried to justify. "You're lucky I didn't call the police," I replied sharply. "But I didn't know she had a boyfriend. He's been away, she picked me over some guy she barely knows," he insisted, completely misunderstanding their bond. "They've been in touch since childhood, writing letters and talking almost every day, and unlike you, who can't hold anything beyond a part-time job, her boyfriend is successful, even her dad likes him," I said plainly. Jonathan's expression crumbled. It was clear he'd been harboring delusions about a future with Laura, and reality was hitting hard. As the movers arrived to take away the furniture, he looked somewhat relieved, though clearly shaken. He turned to me, suddenly desperate. "I guess you're all I've got now. You'll still support my dream of becoming a voiceover artist, won't you?" I looked at him with a hard gaze. "Actually, I've already started the divorce process. From now on, we'll communicate through our lawyers," I said coolly. Jonathan, still convinced I might have some remaining feelings for him, clutched my arm. "Don't say that. Haven't we gotten along all this time?" "Gotten along? Ever since you found out my best friend Laura is wealthy, you've been distant, chasing after her from the moment we married. That was when I realized I'd made a mistake," I replied, steady but firm. Jonathan began to cry, and for a man older than me, his weeping only underscored his childishness. I couldn't bear to stay any longer. "Enough," I said sharply. "I've already told your uncle about the divorce. He expects you'll be working for him, which means I'm done supporting your voiceover dream. You barely practice as it is. Maybe it's time you faced reality, and if you go near Laura again, I will call the police." With those final words, I walked out, determined not to look back. For the time being, I would stay with my parents, though I planned to find a place closer to my work. As for Jonathan, he ended up working for his uncle, just as expected. His parents, who had initially counted on him to marry into wealth, had to move in with him, all three of them now under his uncle's thumb. I realized I had narrowly escaped a toxic family dynamic. Age wasn't the issue. My next relationship would be chosen with more caution. In a happier twist, Laura invited me to her wedding. There, I finally met her longtime boyfriend, and I genuinely wished them every happiness. My name is Nancy, and at 29, I'm driven by ambition and focused on building my career. Right now, I live with my husband, Benjamin. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about starting a family, but Benjamin is adamant that we should prioritize getting into a new home before considering children. So, we're both working hard to save up for our future. I would love to start our family sooner, but whenever we discuss it, Benjamin firmly insists that we need to establish our home first. His stance is clear, but it's also disheartening. It often feels like he's disregarding my feelings, and I can't help but feel pressured to push myself harder to contribute more to our savings. We've been married for a year now, and I'm starting to notice a troubling pattern. Benjamin rarely takes my perspective into account, a habit that has lingered since our dating days. I once admired his decisiveness, but I've come to realize that respect for each other's views is essential in a marriage. Lately, I'm concerned about the stability of our relationship, especially with the influence of his parents, who live close by. Benjamin frequently visits them under the pretense of saving money, yet I've noticed that he often spends time socializing with his colleagues, going out for drinks without factoring these expenses into the budget. It's frustrating how he holds me to strict saving standards but allows himself certain indulgences. His frugality even extends to minor things, like turning off lights too early or limiting the hot water. These rules seem to apply only to me, and it's beginning to feel like our relationship is becoming unbalanced. As much as I'm frustrated, he continues to enforce his viewpoint as if it's the only reasonable one. When we visit his parents, the pressure mounts. "It's been a year since your wedding. We're hoping for some good news soon," they always say, eagerly waiting to hear about their grandchild. During these moments, I often catch Benjamin giving a disapproving glance, silently signaling them to stop. It's a constant reminder of how I feel caught between my desire to start a family and his insistence on waiting until we have our own home. We both want a child, but he insists that the house comes first. I also feel frustrated by my in-laws' constant pressure about having a baby, as if it's my fault we haven't started yet. They don't seem to direct their concerns at Benjamin, even though he's just as unwilling to move forward. After dinner, when Benjamin steps outside for a smoke, he casually says, "Nancy, you're working hard, but if you really want to be a housewife, maybe you should quit your job and focus on the home. That could be why you're not getting the attention you need from me." His words sting, implying that my career is the reason we can't have a family. It's not true. Benjamin isn't ready for children, no matter what he might say. I snap at my in-laws, my patience finally running thin. Benjamin's the one who encouraged me to keep working, I say sharply. Why don't you talk to him before you lecture me again? I continue, frustration rising in my chest. I want children, too, but Benjamin's the one who's not ready. Please stop directing your concerns at me. The room falls silent. I can see the shock on their faces as I excuse myself from the table and head toward the door. Benjamin, casually smoking by the entrance, says nothing. As I get into the car, a friend who had joined us for dinner asks, "Are you leaving already?" She has no idea about the tension that's been building all evening. Exhausted by the relentless pressure from both Benjamin and my in-laws, I declare, I'm done with visiting them for now. I can't take it anymore. Benjamin looked at me, clearly surprised. Why not? We can save on food costs, right? And besides, you want a home and kids soon, don't you? His words hit me like a slap. Fed up, I snapped back. If it's really about saving, then maybe you should cut back on your drinking and smoking. Instead of driving to your parents' place just to avoid the cost of a meal, why don't you save in those ways, too? Everyone needs a break. My voice was sharp, my frustration spilling out. Benjamin had always imposed tight restrictions on me, like cutting back on hot water usage and insisting lights be off by 9 p.m., under the guise of saving money. He seemed to think these changes required no real sacrifice, but if I'm the only one making these adjustments, then I don't even want this house, I thought bitterly. I'm tired of this. You never give up anything yourself, but you're perfectly fine demanding sacrifices from me. He brushed my concerns aside, claiming they weren't a big deal, but I wasn't having it. No, it is a big deal. Do you have any idea how much patience I've had to hold on to all this time? I was furious, his ongoing pretense in front of his parents, making it seem like I was the reason we couldn't have children, only made things worse. I'm tired of being pressured about grandchildren. It's not me who's hesitant about having children, it's Benjamin. I've been clear about wanting them soon, so please stop this constant pressure, I continued, my voice trembling with frustration. Seeing Benjamin struggle for a response to my uncharacteristic outburst gave me a small sense of satisfaction, but it didn't change anything. The real problem was still there, lurking beneath the surface. Uncertain of what to do next, I stared out the car window, blocking him out entirely. A month later, a significant event shifted everything. My father's brother passed away. He had lived a lavish life, leaving behind several pieces of land and a luxurious mansion. Benjamin's eyes widened when he heard about the inheritance. I didn't know you had such a remarkable relative, he said, clearly impressed. A few days later, I decided to meet with a lawyer in our apartment to go over the details of the estate, since the inheritance was exclusively mine, and I could sense Benjamin's discomfort with the whole situation. I politely asked him to step out of the room. I didn't want any potential tension to complicate the meeting. 5 hours later, after the lawyer had explained everything, I thanked him and saw him out. When I turned around, I was surprised to find that Benjamin was no longer in the apartment. I assumed he had stepped out to give us some privacy. Unaware of what was coming, I began preparing dinner. 4 months later, Benjamin invited me on a drive. I couldn't help but feel a mix of curiosity and excitement, but as we drove into a quiet residential area and stopped in front of a house I didn't recognize, confusion took over. Benjamin pressed the intercom, and to my shock, my in-laws stepped out, not from their usual home, but from this new one. My father-in-law's face lit up as he approached us. "You finally made it, so when are you and Nancy moving in?" he asked with a grin. Benjamin answered casually, "We're thinking of moving in by the end of the month." But then my father-in-law's tone changed. He looked at me with a disapproving expression and accused me of being a selfish daughter-in-law, shifting all the responsibility of having children onto Benjamin. I shot Benjamin a sharp, disapproving look, confused by his choice to bring me here. I'd made it crystal clear that I no longer wanted to visit my in-laws. Yet here we were, needing some answers. I asked, "Why are we here, Benjamin?" His response was almost unnervingly calm. "Don't be upset. Living together can help improve your relationship with my mom. Plus, this will be our new home, so you should be more cooperative when it comes to the kids." His words hit me like a blow. He had known exactly how I felt about living with his parents, yet here he was, making decisions for us without so much as a discussion. Benjamin went on, explaining that the house was a two-family residence. "It was always part of the plan for us to live with my parents." "What's the issue with that now?" he asked, as if the arrangement should have been obvious to me. I tried to process it, but the weight of the situation was suffocating. The house was clearly beyond our means, and I couldn't understand how Benjamin thought we could afford such a grand place. My dad and I chipped in, so our savings are basically gone now. "But that's fine, right?" Benjamin said, his tone completely nonchalant. His disregard for our mutual financial plans felt like a slap in the face. Then, as if he hadn't already stunned me enough, he added, I heard your uncle's inheritance was about $720,000, so, if you use that money to pay us back for the house, it should all work out, right? His assumption that I would just hand over my inheritance to cover this mess without even consulting me left me speechless. The sheer audacity of it, to think I would finance his decisions without question, was unnerving. My frustration boiled over, and Benjamin seemed oblivious to the tension in the air. He reached into his bag and pulled out a divorce form, his name already scrawled across it. Your money is our money. If you don't want to live together, let's just get a divorce, he said confidently. The nerve. I took the form from his hand, my voice steady but full of resolve. Fine, if those are the only options, then divorce is the better choice for me. I tucked the form into my bag, turned my back on him, and walked out, leaving my stunned in-laws behind. As I stepped toward the door, I casually added, by the way, I've renounced my uncle's inheritance. Benjamin stood frozen, his face a mix of confusion and disbelief, but I didn't wait for him to react. I headed straight to the bus, made my way home, and immediately filled in my name on the divorce form, right where Benjamin's had already been. I finalized the papers and submitted them without hesitation. Then, I went to a home improvement store, bought a few boxes, and started packing. Realizing I couldn't handle the move alone, I hired a moving company. Thankfully, it was a slow season, and the relocation went quickly. As I packed, I heard Benjamin's car pull up outside. I quickly locked the chain on the door and called out, sorry, I have the chain on. I'm not sure what you do in your state right now. I still have packing to finish. Could you stay at your parents' place for a few days? Benjamin's voice was defiant. I won't accept a divorce, he declared. I was taken aback but reminded him, but you handed me the divorce papers, didn't you? If you signed them, that means you're agreeing to the divorce, you know. He looked at me, his face a mix of frustration and confusion, before quickly changing the subject. Why would you give up a $720,000 inheritance? You'd normally inherit that, he asked, clearly misinterpreting the situation. He must have overheard something about the inheritance and rushed to tell my in-laws. In their haste, they had bought the two-family house without fully considering the consequences. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. The inheritance was mine to handle, and renouncing it was my decision. I did it to avoid exactly this kind of complication. My uncle's estate was far from simple. Even though the inheritance was worth $720,000, the costs were astronomical. The mansion needed to be demolished, the land required expensive upkeep, and my uncle had significant debts. Everyone else in the family renounced their claims, his 2 sons, 2 daughters, his wife, even his grandchildren. It was just me left to decide what to do with it. When I explained everything to Benjamin, his reaction was one of utter disbelief. No way, you're telling me that even with $720,000, there wouldn't have been anything left? That sounds like fraud, he exclaimed, his voice rising with shock. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. After speaking with the lawyer, it became clear that the inheritance wasn't the windfall he thought it was. It was actually more of a burden than anything else. But someone overheard part of the conversation and misunderstood the full picture. His expression went blank as the truth began to sink in. For a moment, I thought he might finally grasp the situation, but I remained firm. It's too late for that now. You've betrayed my trust, Benjamin. The divorce papers have been filed, and we are no longer a couple. So why are you now acting like you don't want this to happen? If you truly didn't want to separate, you should have come after me when I left. I pointed out the consequences of his and his father's rushed decisions, how they had invested in the two-family house without understanding all the facts, without even consulting me. Your mother's opinion on the divorce doesn't change anything. She may not fully grasp the value of money, but that doesn't alter the reality of our situation. A heavy silence settled between us, and I realized that discussing his parents' behavior wasn't my problem anymore. If we were still married, I might have been open to hearing him out, but now, it felt pointless. I turned back to the task at hand. You haven't submitted the divorce papers yet, have you? I asked, my voice steady. His tone shifted to desperation. If you do this now, we can still be together. Let's live in that house. It'll fix everything. I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. It's too late. I've already submitted the papers. There's no going back now. Benjamin's face crumpled in disbelief, a mix of confusion and regret written all over him. He stood motionless by the door, his eyes searching mine for something, an answer, perhaps, that I no longer had to give. I could feel the weight of the moment, but I also knew there was nothing left to say. The damage was done. For a brief moment, I considered asking him to leave, but I didn't want to waste any more time. I turned back to my packing, preparing for the next phase of my life. Benjamin, still standing there, eventually left, and I continued with my plans. I called my workplace to let them know about the divorce, especially since my boss had been acting as a mediator during our troubled times. I also shared the news with my colleagues over lunch, many of whom had celebrated our wedding with us. The next day, Benjamin barged into my department while I was talking to my coworkers, visibly upset. "It's ridiculous that you're talking about the divorce," he blurted. "I wish you hadn't told anyone." He went on to explain to everyone that he had assumed I had inherited a large estate, which was why he had impulsively suggested buying the two-family house. But faced with the choice between divorce and living together, I said, cutting him off, "I chose divorce." Benjamin's outburst only made things worse. At work, he quickly became isolated, and my colleagues, sympathetic toward me, began to distance themselves from him. The tension at his own job escalated until he eventually resigned, unable to handle the fallout. During this difficult period, one of my male colleagues approached me. He had always been kind, but now he spoke with a sincerity that caught me off guard. "I've liked you for a long time," he admitted, his voice soft but steady. "I want to build a life where we can communicate and truly work through things together." His words, unexpected and genuine, offered a flicker of hope amidst the turmoil. It was a reminder that even after everything had fallen apart, the possibility of something different, a healthier, more understanding partnership, was still out there. When my mother-in-law was asked if I would be preparing the New Year's meal, her response was immediate, a dramatic wave of her hands, followed by an exaggerated laugh. "Absolutely not. Impossible. My daughter-in-law can't cook to save her life," she exclaimed, making sure everyone around could hear. She dubbed me the hopeless housewife, incapable of even managing a New Year's feast. With pride, she declared herself the one in charge of the kitchen. Her laughter wasn't just irritating, it was humiliating. I'd endured enough. "My name is Natalie. I'm 29, and I married last year. As a full-time housewife, I genuinely enjoy cooking, and my husband, Daniel, is far from picky. He'll eat anything that's edible, and he's kind and understanding. We live in a lovely newly renovated home with a dream kitchen that has a large island. In theory, everything should be perfect, but there's one constant issue: my mother-in-law. She takes immense pride in her cooking skills and views me as a complete failure in the kitchen. And she doesn't keep it to herself, she lets everyone know. Just the other day, I overheard her chatting with the neighbor's wife, making sure her voice was loud enough for me to hear as I hung laundry outside. My daughter-in-law can't even cook properly. It's dreadful. I don't know how she was raised. My poor son, stuck with her," she lamented. Her words hit me like arrows, but hearing her belittle my family, especially my parents, was more than I could bear. I knew I couldn't let this continue. I've always respected my parents, who taught me so much, but my mother-in-law never made the effort to understand or appreciate those lessons. Instead, she opted to criticize. Today was just another episode in her ongoing series of jabs. "She doesn't even know how to season anything. If I don't cook, there's no flavor at all. Why did my son marry someone like her?" she complained, with the neighbors joining in, suggesting that Daniel must have made a mistake marrying me. They even wondered why she hadn't taught me herself. I clenched my jaw, wishing they would just stop. My grip on a glass tightened, and it cracked in my hand. That evening, when Daniel came home and my mother-in-law was conveniently in the shower, I saw my chance. "Can't you do something about your mom? She's out there spreading rumors about me, saying I can't cook," I said, venting my frustration as I took his jacket. It felt like the only way to get it off my chest. Daniel, though, didn't react the way I expected. He wasn't close to his mother, and he's always been good to me, so I thought he'd defend me, but instead, he seemed confused. "Well, Mom's always been particular about cooking," he said, scratching his head. The word "particular" felt like a poor excuse for the harsh words I'd been hearing. I bit back a comment about her obsession with overpowering spices, staring at him in disbelief. "She's a good cook, though, right?" he asked, almost too casually. "I don't know about good or bad cooking," I replied, fighting the urge to say more. "Please, just get along with her. Isn't that what a wife is supposed to do?" And with that, he walked out of the room, leaving me stunned. Was he serious? What did he mean by a wife's duty? I was struggling to make sense of his words. A wave of frustration hit me. As much as I hated to admit it, my mother-in-law's cooking wasn't something I enjoyed. She'd taken over the kitchen for the last year, supposedly to spare me from the effort, but her meals were far from enjoyable. She believed that loading up on spices made everything better, and Daniel, raised on that style of cooking, always ate without complaint. For me, though, it felt like a daily battle, trying to finish meals that were not only too spicy but also began to affect my health. Each meal became a silent struggle, forcing down the food, afraid of the consequences if I didn't. When I was alone in our bedroom, I let out a frustrated sigh. The hardest part wasn't her cooking, it was that Daniel didn't seem to care about how I felt. As the New Year celebration approached, I couldn't shake the dread that settled in my stomach. It would be my first New Year in this family, and it was clear my mother-in-law's feast would be the centerpiece. I wasn't filled with excitement. Instead, I felt the weight of the expectations that came with it, and the overpowering flavors that had become a permanent part of my life. When Daniel casually mentioned that it was customary for the family to gather and enjoy the feast prepared by his mother for New Year's, I couldn't help but silently question the tradition. I wondered if it was the food they truly loved or if they'd just gotten used to it over the years. On the outside, I simply murmured an "oh," trying to mask the mix of uncertainty and resignation that washed over me. Despite the sympathy I felt for the relatives who eagerly attended each year, I couldn't shake the sense of dread that crept in at the thought of another feast prepared by my mother-in-law. Although my mother-in-law often critiqued my cooking, calling it bland, my parents had instilled in me a strong belief in my abilities in the kitchen. I secretly yearned to cook for everyone, to offer up some subtler flavors that might challenge Daniel's usual spicy meals. With newfound determination, I decided it was time to speak up about the New Year's feast. While she moved around the kitchen, pulling out large plates and pots in preparation for the big day, I saw my opportunity. "I'd like to help with the New Year's feast," I said, my voice tentative but firm as I watched her hustle. She paused, turning toward me with a look of immediate dismissal. "Natalie, you can't even cook properly. How could you possibly prepare food for the new year? It's not just our family, there will be all the relatives here. You know that, right?" she responded, her tone dripping with condescension. "But I'm part of this family now. It's my duty as a wife to contribute," I protested, my desperation creeping into my voice. She shook her head dismissively. "Do you really want to make things awkward right at the start of the new year? Everyone expects my cooking. We can't disappoint them. Please, understand, and don't interfere." Frustration bubbled inside me as I watched her turn back to her preparations, effectively shutting down my offer with a wave of her hand. The new year arrived, and the house filled with about 20 relatives, more than I had anticipated, many of whom I hadn't seen since the wedding. I greeted each guest warmly, ushering them into the spacious dining room that had once intimidated me when I first moved in. The large room, bustling with chatter and laughter, seemed to come alive, perfectly suited for the gathering. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was already the center of attention in the kitchen, deep in conversation with the arriving relatives, orchestrating the celebration as if it were entirely her domain. During the festive preparations, a relative, clearly curious, asked, "By the way, is Natalie preparing the feast this year?" Without missing a beat, my mother-in-law waved her hands dismissively and laughed loudly. "Impossible, my daughter-in-law can't cook at all. She's a hopeless housewife who can't even manage a New Year's feast. I'm the one who handles everything around here," she declared, her laughter sharp and cutting. It wasn't a joke, it was a direct, public insult, meant to humiliate me. At that moment, I reached my breaking point. "Mother-in-law, please let me prepare the New Year's feast this time. If it doesn't turn out well, you can always whip up a palate-cleansing dish," I said, trying to break the uncomfortable silence that had settled. After a brief pause, the room began to murmur with whispers from the relatives. "Well, I certainly don't want a disappointing meal, but I guess practice makes perfect, right?" My mother-in-law conceded reluctantly, sensing the shift in the room as some relatives began to side with me. "Fine, if it doesn't work out, Frida can step in," she added, still unwilling to let go entirely. "All right then, Nat, you can take the reins this year," she said with a sigh, her words carrying a reluctant tone. "But remember, I can always step in. Ladies and gentlemen, let's humor this hopeless housewife for once," she announced, her voice dripping with patronization. With my heart swelling with pride and a fierce determination, I was ready to show everyone what I could do. This was my moment to change the narrative. I threw myself into preparing the meal, pouring everything I had into every dish. As I placed the beautifully arranged feast on the large platter, the room buzzed with praise. "Wow, the meal turned out perfectly. It looks amazing. Well done, Natalie. This isn't something just anyone could pull off," they said, their enthusiasm lifting my spirits. Amidst the compliments, my mother-in-law, who had just returned from shopping for the so-called palate-cleansing dish, glanced at my spread. "It looks fine, I suppose, but it's probably bland," she remarked, emphasizing probably, clearly unwilling to acknowledge any success. Ignoring her, I focused on handing out paper plates and forks to the relatives, encouraging them to enjoy the meal. My mother-in-law rushed into the kitchen, eager to start her backup dish. She kept a watchful eye on the proceedings, likely expecting an opportunity to step in. The relatives took tentative bites of my dishes. A murmur of approval began to grow. Unfazed, my mother-in-law chuckled loudly and announced, "See? I told you. This is why she's the incompetent daughter-in-law. You don't have to force yourselves. I'll prepare the palate-cleansing dish right away." Her tone was triumphantly condescending, assuming the meal would be a failure. But her satisfaction quickly faded as the room filled with genuine admiration. "This is the best New Year's food I've ever had. It's like something from a fancy hotel. Natalie, where did you learn to cook like this?" one of the relatives exclaimed, their voice full of awe. The room buzzed with energy as others chimed in with similar praise. In that moment, my mother-in-law stood frozen, stunned into silence by the unexpected approval. With all attention now focused on me, I felt a surge of confidence. It was the perfect time to share my background. "I grew up in a family deeply passionate about food," I began, my voice steady with pride. "My family owns a renowned French restaurant, celebrated for its authentic cuisine and even recognized in the Michelin Guide. My father is the fifth generation overseeing culinary operations, and my mother, from a long line of chefs, supports him wholeheartedly. From a young age, I learned to cook by observing them. By the time I was in upper elementary school, I was already learning to cook alongside them. Although my brother will inherit the restaurant, the culinary knowledge passed down from my parents remains a deep source of pride within me." The revelation shifted the atmosphere completely. The relatives now looked at me with newfound respect, while my mother-in-law stood speechless. The room buzzed with impressed voices, and I felt a deep connection to my culinary roots, finally sharing my true heritage. That's when I realized just how much my mother-in-law's dismissive attitude had hurt me. To her, belittling my cooking was like denying my parents' legacy and the restaurant that had been a cornerstone of our family for generations. I had mentioned this before marriage, but it seemed lost on her. My mother-in-law, with her condescending ways, probably saw me as little more than a girl from a humble countryside restaurant, while Daniel, indifferent to culinary subtleties, likely didn't understand the difference between a family-run business and authentic French cuisine. I often found myself questioning why I married into this family, the thought bubbling up every time she belittled me. I muttered it under my breath, but as I turned, I heard someone call my name, meeting the expectant gazes of several relatives. I heard, "We have seconds, I want more too." Despite the generous portions I'd made, everything had been devoured. A wave of happiness swept over me, and I felt tears welling up. Receiving praise for my cooking should have been second nature to me, something I'd known before getting married, but over the past year, I had almost forgotten that feeling. "Yes, I'll prepare more right away," I said, a newfound sense of determination filling me as I hurried to the kitchen. I passed by my motionless mother-in-law, who, despite her earlier criticisms, had still brought in the ingredients for the meal. "Mother-in-law, I'll use these ingredients, okay?" I called out, but she didn't respond. The groceries sat untouched in the kitchen, her silence hanging in the air. I moved closer to inspect the contents of the bags when I heard a voice behind me. Could you teach us how to cook too?" I turned to find 4 women standing in the doorway, ranging in age from my own to about my mother-in-law's. Their unexpected request sent a surge of warmth through me. This wasn't just a chance to share my skills, it was an opportunity to connect across generations, to bridge the gap between family members through the shared love of cooking. It felt like a chance to validate myself, to show them not just my skills, but the rich culinary tradition I had inherited. Their eyes sparkled with genuine curiosity and admiration. "The food was amazing, we'd love to learn from you," they said, their enthusiasm filling the room. Their words ignited something within me. I'd never thought about teaching cooking before, but in that moment, I realized how much I could offer. With a smile, I agreed to teach them, and the room buzzed with excitement. They chatted eagerly about how they'd impress their husbands by improving their cooking skills, and just like that, an impromptu cooking class was born. From a distance, my mother-in-law watched us, her face unreadable as she silently tidied up the kitchen. As the class came to an end and we served the dishes, they were met with enthusiastic praise. "I have to admit, Grace's cooking can be a bit too salty for me," Jennifer, one of the women, said with a radiant smile, "but Natalie's dishes, they're delicate and refined, like real French cuisine." A wave of pride washed over me, mixed with a slight unease. I shot a tentative smile in my mother-in-law's direction, but she remained focused on her cleaning, undisturbed by the compliments floating through the room. Just as I began to wonder how to navigate the tension, Daniel walked in, his voice steady. "I actually prefer Natalie's cooking," he said, glancing at his mother. "Mom's strong flavors have always made me worry about the salt. Honestly, I think Natalie should handle the cooking from now on." His words seemed to catch my mother-in-law off guard. She stood there for a moment, stunned, before quietly retreating to her room. The ripple effect of my culinary success spread quickly through the family. Relatives who had once doubted me now looked at me with newfound respect. This unexpected shift in perspective not only boosted my confidence but subtly altered the family dynamics in ways I hadn't anticipated. Soon, my reputation as a skilled chef began to grow. People started asking me to teach cooking classes, and though I was initially hesitant, I remembered the joy I had felt teaching the impromptu class during the New Year celebration. I decided to embrace the opportunity. Word spread fast, and before long, I was being asked to teach classes from all over the country. Life has a funny way of surprising you. I never expected this to be the path my life would take, but soon enough, I found myself featured in a prominent cooking magazine. In the article, I spoke about my culinary heritage and how my father had shaped my skills, feeling proud to share my story with the world. As for my mother-in-law, the woman who had once spread rumors about my cooking abilities, she stopped commenting on food altogether. The shift in family and public opinion had silenced her harsh remarks, and eventually, she stopped cooking altogether, leaving me in charge of meals in our home. Though the increase in responsibilities kept me busy, our household finally settled into a peaceful rhythm, a far cry from the tension that had once defined our interactions. Hello, I'm Sandra, 35 years old, working in an office. I live with my husband, Matthew, and his mother in their family home. Despite being married, I struggle to find happiness due to the relentless criticism from my mother-in-law, which never seems to lessen. Matthew and I met at work, where our companies collaborated on several projects. As we spent more time together, our relationship grew, leading to dinners and dates. After a year of dating, Matthew proposed, and we married when I was 32. In the beginning, our marriage was wonderful, just the two of us, enjoying our successful careers and weekends filled with trips and fine dining. I envisioned a future of shared joy and adventures. But our circumstances changed 3 years later when Matthew's father suddenly passed away. Grieving deeply, Matthew proposed that we move in with his mother to support her. I was taken aback. We'd only been married 3 years, and I cherished the independence we shared. Still, I wanted to support Matthew. Living with my mother-in-law turned out to be challenging. She became increasingly cold and critical, making our home life tense and unhappy. One day, she even handed me divorce papers, suggesting it would be best if Matthew and I parted ways. Confused and overwhelmed, I took a break and stayed with my parents for a month, seeking advice and clarity. During this time, I made the difficult decision to file for divorce. Ironically, this led to her calling me repeatedly, admitting she had been wrong and asking for forgiveness. This period was one of intense self-reflection, teaching me the value of setting boundaries and prioritizing my own well-being. Meanwhile, Matthew's desire to care for his mother only deepened after his father's death. He felt a strong duty to her, feeling guilty for not being more attentive to his father. I owe her this, he told me, looking to me for understanding. Wanting to support him, I agreed to move into his mother's home. Upon arriving, she expressed relief at having us there. "It's a comfort to have you close," she told Matthew warmly. He reassured her. "Mom, we're here for you," she replied with gratitude, saying, "Thank you, dear, I'll look after you both now." Although she said this, I sensed her warmth didn't extend to me. Once we settled in, she offered us treats she'd baked with her beloved almond paste. Matthew's face lit up, but as he praised her baking, she turned to me with a cold look, asking, "Sandra, why do you seem so lost?" Then, abruptly, she suggested I make coffee to go with the pastries. As I struggled to find where things were kept, she snapped, "Where are the coffee pots? Don't you know anything?" Pointing to a messy shelf, she muttered dismissively, "Right over there, with the wife's things." Her remark hurt, especially because it was undeserved. I had always tried to help, but she seemed determined to put me down. It was a stark reminder of how uncomfortable our living arrangement had become, and my doubts about moving in only grew. Even before moving in, our visits to her home were tense. When I'd try to help around the house, she'd often insist, "No need, just sit down," effectively barring me from the kitchen. I eventually stopped offering to help, hoping it would ease the friction, but that didn't stop her from snapping at me. One day, after a particularly sharp comment, she looked at me sternly and demanded, "What's with that look? Do you have a problem?" I didn't want to argue, hoping Matthew might step in, but when I glanced at him, he was absorbed in his phone, oblivious to the tension in the room. His lack of support was painful and isolating. The tension was only the beginning of our challenging living arrangement. Almost immediately after moving in, issues started cropping up. One morning, she barged into our room and exclaimed, "Sandra, why are you still asleep?" I checked the time on my phone. It was only 6 a.m. I replied, surprised, "It's only 6, Mother," but she shot back, "So? You should be up making breakfast and Matthew's lunch, and don't forget, you're supposed to clean the bathroom every day." Her demands left me stunned. Typically, Matthew and I weren't morning eaters, and I didn't make his lunch for work. Cleaning the bathroom daily before heading to work seemed impractical and exhausting. The idea of waking up early to meet all these expectations felt overwhelming. When I hesitated, she grew impatient, criticizing my capabilities and upbringing. "Why are you just standing there? Move. What kind of upbringing makes someone this useless?" Her harsh words stung, but they also sparked something in me, determined to prove her wrong. I began waking up at 6 a.m. every day, preparing not just basic meals but elaborate dishes for breakfast and lunch. I also kept the bathroom spotless. Surprisingly, I found satisfaction in maintaining a clean space, and Matthew noticed my efforts, often thanking me for the meals and cleanliness. Yet, despite my efforts, my mother-in-law's demands only grew. One day, she'd want Japanese cuisine, the next French, and then dishes like homemade pizza or fresh pasta paired with fine wine. These requests came as if each meal were a special occasion, but she expected them daily. What was most frustrating was that Matthew took her side, always insisting I follow her wishes precisely. Make sure you do it exactly how Mom wants, he'd say, never offering to help and leaving it all to me. Our precious weekends were spent cooking elaborate dinners to satisfy her. Meanwhile, she constantly critiqued my life choices. You're a wife, why are you still working? You should be at home supporting your husband, and you're not getting younger. Don't you realize time to have children is running out? Soon, you'll be worthless, she'd declare almost daily. Her comments were not only demanding but deeply hurtful, making me wonder what kind of upbringing had shaped her to be so harsh. Her relentless scrutiny and pressure made me question how sustainable this living arrangement could be. Then, one particularly stressful day, after hours of tension and a challenging day at work, Matthew confronted me with an accusation. Mom says you're neglecting the housework. Is that true? You never listen to me, and you're always so defiant. I used to enjoy the lunches you made, but now it's just frozen food. Do you really believe everything your mom says? Of course, I believe her. Why wouldn't I? Are you implying she's lying? You're failing as a wife. Can't you handle your responsibilities properly? His tone was sharp, almost accusing. I felt a surge of I shot back, and the argument escalated rapidly. Matthew's face turned red with anger, marking a significant shift in our relationship. From that day, life at home became even harder. Anytime my mother-in-law insulted or criticized me, Matthew began echoing her words, adding fuel to the fire. One evening as he walked in, he barked, "Is dinner ready yet? I'm starving, hurry up." "Why are you so slow and useless?" My mother-in-law chimed in, her words sharp as knives. Under my breath, I muttered, "You're both failures, no wonder you're alike." Ignoring me, Matthew turned to his mother, suggesting, "Let's just go out to eat." "That sounds wonderful," she replied, leaving me behind without a second thought. I watched them go, excluded and feeling more isolated than ever, as if I were no longer part of my own family. Day by day, the constant insults and belittlement wore me down, and I found myself questioning whether staying in this marriage was worth the misery. Could I keep enduring this unrelenting negativity? Then, life presented an unexpected opportunity, a chance to change everything. I realized I didn't have to tolerate this toxic environment any longer, but the taunts continued, unyielding. "You're worthless as a daughter-in-law. I don't understand how my son could marry someone like you," my mother-in-law sneered, as Matthew smirked beside her. Seizing the moment, I finally stood up for myself. "I'm going to stay with my parents for a month," I declared, my voice steady. They both stared at me, their faces a mixture of surprise and anger. "What about the house? What if something happens while you're gone?" Matthew exclaimed, sounding almost panicked. "Leaving like this is incredibly irresponsible. If you're going, then divorce my son," my mother-in-law shouted, yanking open a drawer and thrusting a stack of divorce papers at me. "Go on, sign them." "Oh, so you were prepared for this?" Matthew said, startled by his mother's readiness. "That's right," she asserted, smugly convinced she was in control. "If you don't want to follow our rules, then just get a divorce. This makes things easier." "Fine, let's get divorced, then," I replied, surprising them both. They stared at me, stunned, as I began filling out the papers without hesitation. "Here's my part," I said, finishing my signature. "Now, if you don't mind, please move out of the way." Matthew blinked, struggling to process the situation. "Were you just bluffing? This is ridiculous," he muttered, refusing to believe I was serious. I looked him in the eye. "I'm not joking," I said firmly. He grabbed the papers, scrawling his name quickly. "There, is this what you wanted?" he sneered, trying to mask his uncertainty. "Well, too late now. It's over for you too." My mother-in-law laughed coldly, but I felt only a sense of relief. This was the true end, for both of them. With nothing left to say, I left their house, filed the divorce papers, and returned to my parents' home. When I explained everything to my father, he was shocked but promised his full support, assuring me I'd made the right decision. A month passed, and suddenly my phone buzzed with calls from my former mother-in-law. "Hello? What do you need?" I asked, keeping my tone icy. "We're strangers now." "Please don't say that," she pleaded, her voice layered with false sincerity. "Matthew and I, we're going through a hard time." But I knew I was finally free. Oh, really? That must be tough for you, I replied curtly. Her voice turned sharp with sarcasm. I haven't even said anything yet. I'd rather end this call. Can I hang up? I pressed, eager to disconnect. Wait, she pleaded. I have a favor to ask. Can you speak to your father? Why would I, after everything you and Matthew put me through? I shot back. I'm sorry, truly. I didn't realize, your father's company is a major partner for the company Matthew works for, she said, attempting to mend bridges. It turned out that my father's company had a significant business relationship with Matthew's employer, a detail I'd probably mentioned before our marriage, though back then, with her husband alive, my mother-in-law likely hadn't paid much attention. Matthew must have known, too, but he seemed to have forgotten while siding with his mother against me. After our divorce, my father decided to end the business relationship, and when Matthew's company offered to keep the contract only if they let him go, Matthew lost his job. As it happened, he'd taken out a large loan to remodel our home, anticipating we'd stay there long term. Up until our divorce, my income as a working professional had helped keep us financially stable. Now, without my contributions and with his recent job loss, he and his mother faced a difficult situation. My mother-in-law reached out once more, her tone far from her usual defiance. Please, help us, she said weakly. I apologize for my mistakes. I'm sorry, I replied firmly, but I can't forgive you. If you expect help from me, it's pointless. Instead, maybe you should look for a job, even if it's temporary. As for me, this conversation is over. After I hung up, I blocked both of their numbers. Later, I heard that they couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments and had to sell the house. It was a newer home, one that could have supported my mother-in-law comfortably through retirement. Their poor financial planning and unnecessary spending had led to a waste. They ended up moving to a small apartment on an island, where my ex-husband now works part-time. This drastic change underscored the consequences of their actions and what came from our severed ties. Meanwhile, I began preparing for an exciting new chapter. Rather than rushing into my own place, I decided to stay with my parents until my departure. This time with them is precious, and I'm grateful to enjoy every moment before I move overseas. I feel a sense of hope and excitement about this fresh start abroad. The challenges with my ex-husband and mother-in-law are now in the past, and I'm optimistic about what lies ahead. Perhaps I'll even meet someone special and experience a new love. I truly wish happiness for my ex-husband and mother-in-law in whatever comes next for them. Thank you for following my journey. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. I look forward to sharing more of my story as I embark on this exciting new chapter. It was a strange day. My normally reclusive husband had stepped outside, and the doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I answered, my mother-in-law stood before me with a cold, harsh expression. Honestly, you should answer the door as soon as the bell rings. You're proving to be quite an ineffective wife, incapable of even the simplest tasks. I'm sorry, I was working and didn't hear it, I replied, trying to keep my composure. You're lying again, she snapped. I know your excuses. You say you're working, but you're just wasting your time. You can't even manage the house, and now you're pretending to be busy. That's not true, I countered, my voice firm. You don't have to believe me, but the truth remains the same. With a disdainful smile, my mother-in-law waved a piece of paper in front of me. Do you know what this is? She asked, her voice laced with smug satisfaction. I swallowed, feeling a knot form in my stomach. What is it? These are divorce papers, she said, her smile growing wider. My son has already signed them. He doesn't want you anymore. Now, sign here and leave. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at the paper in disbelief, the reality of the situation crashing down on me. My hand shook as I reached for the pen, signing without a word. My mother-in-law's triumphant laugh echoed in my ears as I watched her relish the moment, oblivious to the emotional turmoil brewing inside me. I'm Samantha. I work as a freelance writer and editor from home. A few years ago, I had a steady job at a publishing company, and the experience I gained there has allowed me to maintain a stable income ever since. Though freelancing has its ups and downs, I've managed to build a comfortable life thanks to the savings I accumulated during my corporate days. I met Kevin while I was working at the publishing company. At the time, I was still new to editing, and Kevin was an aspiring writer. We both faced many challenges, but his dedication to his craft inspired me. Even when success seemed out of reach, he never gave up. We dated for several years before getting married. When I left my corporate job to pursue freelancing, our early days together were filled with hope. Though I wasn't yet stable as a freelancer and Kevin was still chasing his writing dream, we supported each other. We split household chores and finances equally, living in harmony. As my freelance career started to gain traction, Kevin began portraying himself as a successful writer to his parents, but the truth was far from that. Despite his relentless efforts, he faced constant rejections from publishers. He'd never made it past the second round of selections for any writing opportunity. I knew he wanted to spare his parents the worry, so I kept quiet, playing along with his version of events when we visited his family. In the beginning, it was easy, just smile and nod, but as Kevin continued to insist he was thriving, I began to feel increasingly uncomfortable during these visits. Not only did his parents fully believe his stories, but they also started to view me as a lazy, dependent wife, someone who didn't contribute anything to the household. They couldn't grasp the concept of freelancing. Working from home was foreign to them, and over time, their attitudes became more dismissive. Whenever I visited, they would question me, accusing me of being a non-contributing spouse. How can you face your husband's family when you do nothing all day? They would ask. I'm a freelancer, I work from home. I'd explain, Kevin and I share the household duties, and I contribute to the finances just as he does. They would retort that I wasn't pulling my weight, that Kevin was supporting me, and that I should be more grateful. They warned that if I didn't shape up, Kevin might decide to leave me. Despite their criticism, I knew the truth about our relationship. I knew how we supported each other, emotionally and financially, and no amount of judgment from his family would shake my resolve. The conversation with my in-laws had become a broken record. If Kevin leaves you, how will you support yourself? I almost let out a frustrated sigh, but I held it in. They had no idea. I was the one paying most of our living expenses and managing the household chores. Yet they continued to believe the opposite. It was Kevin who wasn't contributing. He was unemployed and barely helping at home, but I kept that to myself. At first, their jabs were limited to when Kevin wasn't around, but things had escalated recently. During a dinner at his parents' house, Kevin and I arrived together, only to find that they had prepared a meal, just for him. No plate for me. It had become a regular occurrence, this subtle exclusion, and it didn't stop there. They were starting to spread rumors about me to the rest of the family. At the rare family gatherings we attended, I could always hear the whispers behind my back. Though their attitude didn't hurt me as much as it once did, my frustration with Kevin was growing. He simply sat there, silent, letting it all happen. It was infuriating. On top of that, my in-laws, under the false impression that Kevin was a successful writer, began expecting him to buy them things. To maintain the image they had of him, Kevin complied with their requests, and as a result, I found myself unknowingly spending nearly $22,000 a month on them, money that came directly from my own savings. Kevin would withdraw money from my bank account without asking. At first, I overlooked the smaller amounts, but as the costs added up, I couldn't ignore it anymore. One day, I finally confronted him. Please, don't spend my money without asking me first. His response was nothing short of infuriating. He looked at me like I was being unreasonable. You work from home, so your job's easy, right? You just play around and make money, he said, a mocking tone in his voice. Since it's so simple for you to earn money, why not spend a little on my mom? Don't be so stingy. My jaw dropped. Kevin, is that how you see my job? He shrugged. Yeah, I think it's easy. You get paid to stay at home every day. I couldn't believe my ears. He actually thought so little of my work. As he walked away, chuckling, I felt a weight settle over me. I had reached my breaking point. This was it. I could no longer tolerate his disregard for me and my contributions. The man I once believed in was gone, replaced by someone who mocked my hard work. Kevin wasn't working on his manuscript as he claimed. Instead, he was spending hours playing computer games. When we first met, Kevin had been serious about his writing. He was passionate, determined to create something great. That Kevin was long gone. With a heavy heart, I began searching for an apartment, one that would be just for me. Quietly, I began packing away my things, preparing for the moment I would finally leave. I found a small place that felt right and went to visit it, confirming it would be my new home. One day, while Kevin was out, my mother-in-law showed up at the house. She rang the intercom with an urgency that felt intrusive. As soon as I opened the door, my mother-in-law marched in and settled herself onto the sofa as if she owned the place. Samantha, it's time for you to leave, she declared, her tone leaving no room for argument. Leave? What are you talking about? I asked, taken aback by her bluntness. I've been telling you for ages that you don't work, you don't help with the house, and you're nothing more than a useless wife, she said, her voice sharp. There's no way Kevin, a successful writer, belongs with someone like you. I tried to speak up, but she cut me off before I could respond. If you move out, I'll come stay here. I'll cook for Kevin every day, and I won't have to deal with his grandmother. She's impossible to live with, picky about the food and always complaining about the dust. I can't stand it anymore. I'm moving in, and I'll put her in a nursing home. And how do you plan to pay for that? I asked, raising an eyebrow. I'll have Kevin take care of it. He's making plenty of money, so it shouldn't be an issue, she said, as though it were the simplest thing. But you're in the way, so I need you to leave. With that, she shoved a stack of divorce papers in my face. Why do you have those? I asked, stunned. I had him fill them out a while ago, she replied, a smug grin spreading across her face. I told him to divorce you as soon as possible. I glanced at the papers, indeed. Kevin's handwriting filled the lines. It hit me strangely, relief. Of all things, I had been ready to leave, but I had no idea how the divorce would unfold. I thought Kevin might drag his feet, that he would cling to whatever semblance of our love remained. I had anticipated a long and drawn-out argument, but now? The papers were already filled out, signed by him. It felt like a weight lifted off my chest. I didn't hesitate. I picked up the pen and signed without a second thought. Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly recovered, her voice cold and commanding. Now get out. Leave everything behind. All of it was bought with Kevin's money, so don't take anything with you. She laughed as she said it, a harsh, cruel laugh. I didn't waste any time. I packed up what little I needed and moved into the apartment I had already found. On my way there, I stopped by the municipal office to officially file the divorce papers, and just like that, my new life began, living alone, in peace, free from the constant judgment and ridicule. It felt liberating. Surprisingly, I found that my work, which had once been interrupted by all the chaos, was now flowing better than ever. Just 5 days into my new life, I was working from home when I received a call from Kevin. The desperation in his voice was unmistakable. Please, come home. I frowned, setting my work aside. What now? I'm sorry, he pleaded, his voice strained. Please, come back home. I shook my head, my resolve clear. I'm not coming back. We're divorced now. What? No, that's not valid, he protested. I never agreed to it. Kevin, I said firmly, those divorce papers were in your handwriting. It's a done deal. He tried to backpedal. It was just a threat. I didn't mean it. I never wanted a divorce. I stood my ground, but you still wrote them. A divorce is a divorce. You don't need a wife who plays around all day, does easy work, and doesn't help with the house. You wanted out, and now you have it. You get to live with your family, the one you love so much. What's the problem? His apology was all he could muster. I'm sorry, he repeated, his voice hollow. Then he started explaining his new predicament. My family thinks I'm a successful writer, so they quit their jobs and moved in with me, expecting me to support them. Now they want me to pay for grandma's surgery, and I just don't have that kind of money. I see, I said, finally understanding why Kevin was so desperate for me to come back. So this is why you want me back? Yes, he admitted, his voice tinged with frustration. Now that my parents know I've been lying to them, they're furious. They're pressuring me to bring you back, and I'm in a really difficult spot. Please, Samantha, come back. Let's try to live together again. Do you really think I'll just come back after everything that's happened? I asked, incredulous. We're divorced, Kevin. You need to face your real problems. Please, don't say that, he pleaded, sounding pathetic. No matter how many times I told him that we were divorced and that he was now a stranger to me, Kevin refused to accept it. He kept grasping at any thread of hope, trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. Finally, in a burst of frustration, he snapped, Fine, if you're so determined to end it, I'll sign the divorce papers, but you need to take responsibility for my parents' care and alimony. You were supposed to help with that when we were married. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What are you talking about? If you hadn't divorced me, your parents would have ended up in a care facility, and we would have had to pay for it. You pushed for this divorce, Kevin. They found out you lied about me, and now they're angry and hurt. All of this is your doing. I'm not paying alimony. No, I won't pay that, I stated firmly, refusing to take on the responsibility for his mess. I don't know what kind of twisted logic you're using, but when we were married, you called me lazy, worthless. You lied about me, and your parents and relatives believed your lies, blaming me for everything. You never stood up for me. You ridiculed me instead of defending me. If you need money so badly, why don't you go take out a loan from a bank? With those words, I ended the call, not waiting for him to respond. I blocked his number and changed my contact details, cutting off all ties for good. A few months later, I happened to pass by my old in-laws' house. It had been sold and turned into a parking lot. The house that had once been full of so much noise and life now gone, replaced by concrete. As I stood there, a neighbor who had just returned from shopping walked by. She nodded toward the empty lot and said, Kevin's family had to move into an old apartment. They lost everything because of their financial troubles. I hear their fighting got so bad that it could be heard all over the neighborhood, and even the police were called a few times. She patted my shoulder sympathetically. You went through a tough time, too, she said before hurrying off. I stood there for a moment, reflecting on the turn of events. Kevin's lies had caught up with him. He had tried to present himself as something he wasn't, but now the truth had been exposed. His fabrications couldn't hold up, and the gap between the reality and the story he had told grew wider with each lie. It was strange to think how our lives had unfolded so differently from the way he had imagined in his writing. His own story had turned into something far more chaotic than any novel he could have written. It was like a plotline gone wrong, one he had failed to predict. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for him. He had ruined his own life, chasing after hollow dreams and deceiving everyone, including himself. But even in my sympathy, I knew that his downfall was a valuable lesson. Watching his self-destructive behavior had taught me something important: the consequences of lies and how quickly they can spiral out of control. It reminded me that, in the end, the truth always prevails. The idea of building a false identity, no matter how clever or well-intentioned, would always lead to disaster. I promised myself I wouldn't make the same mistakes. I would remain true to myself, not letting the weight of false appearances crush me the way it had crushed Kevin. In the end, the truth is far stronger than any lie.